Hey there, bookkeeping side hustle community. Glad to have y'all here. I'm excited about this interview today. We have a representative from OnPay Payroll Company who is going to be teaching us about how we can grow our firms by offering payroll services, the best practices and business models. So I wanted to title this, "Oh crap, I got my first payroll client." They sort of nixed that title, but that's sort of the gist of where I'm hoping we go with this a little bit, because I know that I was in your shoes. Several years ago and had that first client ask me for help with getting started with payroll, and it kind of made me panic. And so we're here to demystify this a little bit. So thank you for being here. A little bit more admin real quick before I introduce our guest. bookkeepingsidehustle.com/onpay is where you can find out all the information that we're going to talk about today. We're going to mention some end of year deals and information about a demo next week and that sort of stuff. So go to that URL or go to the description below. In the description, you'll have a chance to sign up with OnPay, create your accountant profile. If OnPay ends up being a resource that you want to use, so that's down below. But this is just going to be a general payroll teaching session, and we're glad to have you here. If you, and we're giving away a $100 Amazon gift card at the end of this. I'll be spinning the prize wheel for those of you who registered for that. If you didn't get your name in the prize wheel, we're going to spin it again next Thursday when we do the full OnPay demo on November 18th. So still sign up. Go to bookkeepingsidehustle.com/onpay and you can get your name on this wheel for next time. And if you appreciate what I'm doing here, give me the YouTube trifecta, subscribe, thumbs up, leave a comment or question below. And speaking of comments, let us know where you're from, what states you're in that you'll be running payroll in. And now I'd like to introduce our guest. We have Kara Rajapaksa from OnPay. Please introduce yourself. And she brought an accounting joke, so let's hear that too.
I absolutely did. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. Last name spot on, and I'm also glad that we could compromise on the title too.
There we
I
go.
definitely understand that fear. So I hope this is a good one. Why did the accountant push the wages, salary, and bonuses down a hill?
Why did the accountant push the wages, salary, and bonuses down the hill? Anybody know? I don't know. What is it?
She wanted to see the payroll. Bada bish.
She wanted to see the payroll. Y'all, give her some online
A
cheers.
courtesy
Okay.
laugh, maybe.
Oh,
I'm not
courtesy
expecting
laugh.
much.
No, I like it. Payroll. It's kind of like a dad joke. That's about what all
Yeah.
the accounting jokes we've
Oh,
had have
good.
been.
Okay.
So awesome. And what's your role at OnPay?
Oh, yes, I didn't really introduce myself. So I am a product consultant. I actually started with OnPay as an part of the implementation team. So I was helping small business owners who they themselves super intimidated by payroll, moving over prior wages, and then I actually used to be the team lead on our team for accountants and bookkeepers, where we helped, just the same kind of, whoa, there's a lot going on in the payroll space. Help implement, bring over their clients that they were helping to manage payroll. So I have a lot of experience in that, and now my focus is more just kind of providing educational content.
Awesome. Well, I want us to dive in. I know you'll have a great teaching session for us. But before we dive in, let's say someone can't watch this whole video. Give me the top 2 or 3 things that if someone has to stop watching this in 1 minute, what do you want them to take away?
So I think 3 main takeaways. Payroll, yes, it can absolutely be intimidating. It can be time consuming. It can be a huge overhead expense for small business owners. But that's what really makes it such a rich area for opportunity when you're looking at advisory service offerings.
Okay.
And you truly do have the flexibility in how you offer the service, what your level of involvement is. And this can also change depending on the client. It's your business. You're choosing how you want to offer it. And then I would say third, payroll, it can absolutely be automated for ease and compliance. That's why we recommend, partner with OnPay or partner at least with a third-party provider. It can make a lot of sense to automate a lot of that, but always going to have that fundamental understanding of just the basics of payroll, which we'll explore today.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard it said no one should be doing payroll. So
No.
partnering with OnPay is a way to like don't be filling out tax tables or anything like that. They have that in the back end. So we're beyond needing that expertise. You just help facilitate getting stuff set up with a provider like OnPay. So that was news to me. I mean, I figured that I would be calculating down to the penny of what Social Security deduction was, and that is not
Yeah.
the case, y'all. So maybe everyone else knows that's not how it's done, but for me, I didn't know, and so I'm glad that there are folks like y'all.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready for the slides. If you'll share your
Yeah.
screen, we will get going.
Perfect. And are you able to see my
Oh,
screen now?
yep. There we go. And let me take off, switch to here, and the show is yours. I will be chiming in with questions that I have because I always
Yeah.
have questions, and I'll be monitoring the chat. So if y'all have questions, please let us know, and I'll be asking Kara for you.
That sounds great. And then so welcome everyone to our session today. We're going to go over, and when I look this way, I'm just looking at my second monitor,
Perfect.
how to grow your firm by offering payroll as a service. We're going to go over best practices and business models. And again, my name's Kara Rajapaksa, product consultant here at OnPay. And OnPay, who we are, Kate touched on this briefly. We offer payroll. We also offer HR and benefits for small businesses. We've got best-in-class integrations with QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, Xero, a whole bunch of other, suite of tools as well. So it makes us a really robust option for offering payroll. We speak to a lot of your clients' favorite systems as well. We also offer free payroll for our accounting and bookkeeping partners. So
Okay.
I would recommend call out next week, November 18th, 11 a.m. Eastern. We're actually going to go talk more specifically to OnPay, take a look in app. But today we're going to cover just generalities. We're going to go over the basics of payroll, why offering payroll as a service, it's a natural extension of your services. I think you're going to be surprised through this session, like, wow, this is actually pretty manageable. We'll go over what are some methods that you can use or service models to offer payroll, how to market payroll, how do you bring up that conversation with the client, how do you bill for it, and then, we'll proceed from there with any questions that you have. So please let me know as we go along. I know Kate's going to let me know her questions, but I really encourage you. I want questions.
I'll chime in right now.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say, like, if you're building a bookkeeping business, you're not going to be able to stiff arm payroll the whole time. I have, in my first year and a half of business, I brought on only solopreneurs, and by within 18 months, all of them needed payroll. So,
Oh my gosh.
which
is a good problem to have when you think about it,
and
right?
I'm charging them for it, and each subsequent one was easier to, like, get set up than that first one, but if you're serving clients, y'all, like, and we're doing our job and we're helping them, they're gonna grow and they're gonna need to hire. So this isn't a matter of when, but it's a matter of if. I'm sorry, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're gonna have to do this. You're gonna have to. So let's learn it.
Absolutely. And so I can think our topic du jour is kind of that payroll 101.
Yep.
Payroll in its most general sense, just want to make sure we capture that. It refers to the process of actually paying employees. You can pay contractors as well, but generally we're thinking of this as employees. And it's all that can entail. It could be the list of employees that you're paying for the services they perform, the actual amount that you're paying them each pay period, the actual calculation of taxes, resulting net pay. Essentially, every person who receives a paycheck, which is going to be everyone on this call, I know, who receives a paycheck, you're going to be impacted by the accuracy of the process. So it's really good to get it right the first time. And then, as Kate was mentioning earlier, it's a matter of when, not if. It's often the greatest overhead expense for a business. We conducted this survey, and not to kind of nerd out too much about payroll, but we did this huge survey of over 1,000 small business owners, and we discovered that they're spending a lot of time on payroll. They're spending on average 18 hours a month. And that's not including other HR tasks, which can cumulatively come to 40 hours a month. So
Wow.
that's like 10 hours a week or something. So it's really something you can save, a quantifiable amount of time back in your client's day by offering this. So kind of going over some basic steps on the screen. We're going to go over each of these steps individually, though. So very first step, you're going to need to figure out the gross pay. So payroll takes up a lot of time, may not be the first thing on their mind when they get started either, as Kate alluded to, but as they're scaling, as they're growing, hiring their first employee, or even paying themselves, there are general steps that need to be considered. So gross pay is the number one. We need to make sure that if they have hourly folks, those hours are being tracked. They're being multiplied by the hourly rate of pay. Are there other wage items like bonuses, commissions, tips, shareholders insurance, overtime? And then actually, Kate, I'm really glad you brought up owners needing to pay themselves through payroll, because their business entity type, that's going to be a major factor in how they can and should pay themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a client who's an S Corp owner, the IRS says that S Corp owners or operators who provide more than minimal services to that S Corp must pay themselves as employees of the S Corp. So this
Mm-hmm.
ensures that the employee and employer is paying their appropriate share of Social Security and Medicare taxes. And we'll get to those taxes very shortly, but just taxes as a whole. And the advantage of this structure is that owners can generally take the remaining profits as dividends to shareholders of the S Corp, which are not subject to these FICA taxes. Now, this can create a large tax advantage over sole props in some cases, because sole props are paying both the employee and employer Social Security taxes on 100% of their net profits. So that's one example why it's super important to understand as well, what is your client's type of business? There's going to be different requirements that apply to each type. We have a great article on our website too, but that's just kind of one component of this step of gross wages.
Okay.
Yep. So now that we have the employee's gross pay, of course, there's taxes. Taxes are
Yep.
inevitable. Employers, they are legally responsible for withholding all relevant payroll taxes from an employee's pay, and then they remit those taxes on behalf of the employee to the appropriate tax agency. So this is actually something, when I was in onboarding, I have had an employer tell me, yeah, my employee doesn't really want to pay taxes, so I think I'm just going to mark them as exempt. Be very careful. I think this is great, where this is where you can really push your client. You can send them information for the IRS or state agency, but it's the employer needs to be aware too that they can't just do that willy-nilly. They are responsible for remitting those taxes on behalf of that employee. So several different types of payroll taxes that we see. There are taxes at the federal level you're aware of: IRS, federal income tax, Social Security, Medicare. You have state level taxes too. It does depend on the state. There are 9 states out there that don't collect income tax through payroll. And then state level taxes could include short-term disability insurance and just a wide variety depending on the state that your client's business is located in. And then we also have county or city level taxes. And I call those colloquially just local taxes or locals.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone here is dialing in from Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and a few other states, you're probably nodding your heads because you're very well aware of the local tax responsibility. So sometimes
Yeah.
it can get a little bit tricky.
I had an Ohio one for only 2 months, and then that employee moved to DC, and I was like, why didn't you just wait to hire her? So I have a question about this. Do y'all prompt the users for all these different jurisdictions? So like, I don't have memorized the 9 states that don't require federal income tax, and I certainly don't have memorized the states that have the local taxes. So in OnPay, or is it helping us get through that? Because that was a fear I had, like not knowing, like I don't know what I don't know. Do y'all
Yeah.
help us know what we don't know?
Absolutely. So we want kind of our creed is that we want to make sure that you leave payroll to the experts, which is us. We want you to have visibility and transparency to the process. We want to make sure you can access filings, or there's actually a report you can see the tax deposits we're making on your behalf. But we want to make sure that it's done right, it's done compliantly. We do have an error-free guarantee, so it's absolutely on us to make sure it's correct. So if we take local taxes as an example, based on the employee's worksite address, based on their residential address, OnPay is going to know for state unemployment, for example, that's typically derived from where the employee actually physically works, where we're going to make sure that we're factoring that in. State income tax generally is derived from where the employee lives, although, depending on if it's a multi-state situation, we have all these factors in play depending on the setup of that worker for their worksite and residential address. And then for local taxes, what I've seen some providers too, and not to knock them by any means, but I see some providers give people an option where you're essentially checking off counties or jurisdictions, and then they're like, all right, you choose which local taxes. We don't do that. We actually use geocoding. It's a little bit more complex, or an extra layer of accuracy than like based on zip code. Local taxes, like in Pennsylvania, for example, you could have 2 houses on the same street, and based on the geocoding that actually Pennsylvania is using, to map out or divide those local taxes. Two houses on the same street, believe it or not, could be in two separate taxing jurisdictions for local or county taxes. So that's why we make sure we're adding that level of accuracy. It's not on you to make that choice. We're actually automatically going to do those calculations for the client.
Awesome. Awesome. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so some common taxes I just wanted to have displayed on the screen. That way people can refer to it after the session as well. I don't expect you to memorize Social Security or Medicare rate by any means. But taxes first and foremost. After withholding the required taxes, though, your client is going to want to factor in, or you're going to want to factor in voluntary benefits that the employee is paying into. And really common ones, you've got opt-in retirement savings like a 401k, health insurance, donations. There are also involuntary deductions, like when wages are garnished to pay back taxes or child support. There are deductions, some of which I just mentioned, that can be pre-tax as well. So I did put taxes first because generally that is going to be the first step. But some deductions are pre-tax, meaning that they reduce, you take the gross wages, you subtract the gross wages by the amount of the pre-tax deduction, and then you're calculating a tax based on that lower amount.
Yep.
So that's a really good benefit of, to use more puns, offering benefits. But there are taxes that are taken out after other taxes have been withheld. There are taxes that reduce some taxes, but not all. So that is actually something I just want to make clear we would factor in for you based on the deductions that are being keyed in.
Awesome.
Yep. And then also too, at this stage, I would say if there are maybe not a benefit, but a reimbursement your client needs to add that are non-taxable, you can add that after this step because it doesn't factor into any tax calculations. And then we've got what everyone loves. You've got your net pay. You may know it as take-home pay. It starts from gross. Then we subtract the following, pre-tax deductions, federal, state, and local taxes, involuntary deductions, and then voluntary deductions are last. And then the amount that's remaining is going to be that employee's net pay. And then don't forget, it's time to pay the employee. They're going to let you know if you don't. Could be by direct deposit. I know, right? Check, pay card, cash. There's a variety of methods, but I would say right now, direct deposit is probably about 75% of what at least I see our clients using.
Right.
Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but in addition to taxes that are withheld from an employee's pay, your client also have to think about employer-specific taxes. These don't get withheld from the employee. The employer has to match the amounts for Social Security and Medicare tax. And it can be quite significant. Bundled together, it's 7.65% of the applicable taxable wages for those taxes. So that's where benefits actually can reduce costs for the employer side as well. You've also got federal unemployment, and you also have state unemployment tax too. And then I always want to give a little asterisk, depending on the state, sometimes there are additional, like Oregon has these local TriMet or transit taxes that are employer only and specific to certain regions. So there could be potentially more employer taxes as well.
Okay. Yep. Hey, before we get too far off of the net pay slide, Beth is asking, can an employer require their employees to do direct deposit?
Generally, no. It's actually, from what I understand, a lot of that is done at the state level as to what you can require. And even to like for pay cards as well, that's another method of payment, sort of like a reloadable debit card. Not exactly what you asked, but I wanted to call out too that there's also state level restrictions too. What I really recommend for employers that would like to encourage their employees to accept direct deposit is look at the state first, but also it doesn't hurt as part of the onboarding workflow to capture an employee's signature for a direct deposit authorization form. And then depending on the state, you may be able to do that, but I know that it's state specific, so I don't want to give a blanket statement. Your payroll provider too, or their payroll provider, like OnPay, for example, we do allow you to invite an employee by email to complete a self-enrollment process. Part of that self-enrollment process is to capture the routing and account number for direct deposit. It's not mandatory, but more often than not, we see employees fill this out. You also can capture an electronic signature for a direct deposit authorization if you wanted that on file. So whether it's OnPay or whether it's someone else, I would kind of maybe try to bundle that in with the initial enrollment. And then it's usually a lot easier to get it done at that stage than coming back at a later time.
So how does OnPay pay someone who doesn't have a bank account that they want direct deposit to?
Yeah.
Mailing checks?
So we're not mailing checks. That's why we're able to keep our costs so low. But we do have an option in app for employers to print out checks directly from their screen.
Okay.
If they need the MICR information, MICR, that's like routing and account number and banking details. If they don't have check stock with that on it, then they can let our support team know or their onboarding rep, and we can get it added for free. I also mentioned pay cards too, Kate, and Beth too, because this is also your question.
Mhm.
Pay cards, they're not tied to an employee's bank account. They work similar to a reloadable debit card. So we see that used in construction, ag, or restaurant
Oh,
industries where
yeah.
the employee doesn't have a bank account. And the cost can be pretty minimal for the employer. And sometimes the employees have these nifty apps they can use with the pay card as well. So I actually encourage that, because for cash flow purposes, we're taking the money and we're sending it via ACH right to that pay card. So it kind of removes the hurdle of you having to wait to reconcile a check once it's being cashed.
Right, right, right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Thanks for that,
Yeah.
and thanks for that question, Beth.
Yes.
While you're going to the proper slide, I'm going to
Yeah.
jump in. Rachel was asking about that article about Escort versus sole proprietor.
Ooh.
We will
Yeah.
get that to you,
Oh,
Rachel,
okay.
in the comments of this section, unless someone from like OnPay is watching and they want to chime in the comments right now.
Yes.
Otherwise, I will make sure that's in the comments of the YouTube section, y'all, because that was a very rich article. There's a lot of content creation you could do from borrowing whatever OnPay is going to be teaching in that Escort versus sole prop. So take an article, slice and dice it, get some LinkedIn content or whatever, and then like, if you want me to help you with this, give me a call. I will be your bookkeeper, and help you
Yes.
with payroll. But okay, let's keep going.
Perfect. And I'll tell too, I know there is an on payer that's watching, so please include that link. Let's get everyone the links they need. So yes, we have to make sure, all right, well, we withheld the taxes. Definitely make sure that those taxes are being deposited. Your client or you, if you're helping them in this, you need to send the employee and employer taxes to the respective taxing authority. So it's not all going to the IRS. I'm sure the IRS would love that. But for federal income tax, Social Security, and Medicare, that does go to the IRS. For state and local income taxes, that goes to the state's withholding tax agency. Now, a frequent question that I get, especially during the initial onboarding, is, well, when I'm submitting those payments, what quarter or tax quarter do those payments fall under? So let's say that you have a client, they pay employees the first week of January 2022 for services that were performed in December 2021. A question I get asked often is, all right, the pay period is December, so I'm going to file that under quarter four 2021. Actually, no. The IRS goes by something what's known as the constructive date of receipt. It's the moment that the employee has their paycheck available to them without restriction. So some of you are mentioning, hey, I really want people to pay by or go by direct deposit, but it's really, when did they have that check in their hands? That's a good way to think of it as well. Not necessarily when they cash it, but constructive days receipt is what they go by. So if the check date is January 1st, 2022, even if the pay period is for December, we're going to file that payroll activity under quarter one of 2022.
Okay.
So yeah.
But again,
yeah.
you're doing it, so I'm not having to
Oh
think
no,
about.
yeah, sorry.
Let me calculate January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd because that like, don't do it, people. Don't do it.
No.
Let them do it for you, because we will we'll screw that up. Period.
Gosh.
Period. Like, get help. It's worth it.
No, I do think for ease of mind, it's definitely worth it, because your clients can each have different withholding deposit frequency schedules. Not everyone is necessarily on the deposit frequency date. So this is just when I'm speaking, just definitely product agnostic. But I will say, yes, Kate, you've honed in on why it's so crucial and helpful to have it streamlined through a third-party service like OnPay. The timing in general for federal income tax, Social Security, Medicare, it depends on really your client's payroll activity, how frequently those employees are paid. And there's something called the look back period, which it's a historical analysis of your client's payroll and past payments. OnPay, for example, by default, we pay all of our clients federal taxes on a semi-weekly basis, unless it's large enough to necessitate a next day threshold. Another reason that is going to go with the payroll provider, because we're going to know what that threshold is when it's reached, and we're going to be proactively reaching out to make sure. Federal unemployment's a little bit, I don't want to say trickier, but it's a little bit more nuanced. It's due in the quarter in which the tax due exceeds $500. So if you have a client that really is doing minimal payroll, and they aren't reaching that threshold, that liability for federal unemployment is going to roll over from quarter to quarter until they hit that $500 federal unemployment tax due. Either way, it's going to be due after the end of the year. So it's not rolling over between tax years, but that's just something to consider. And then those payments, they can be made electronically to the IRS. They have this whole electronic portal set up. And then state taxes, there is a state withholding agency that should be contacted because their filing requirements are going to be dependent on the client specifically. And state unemployment taxes, what's nice about them is they're generally just deposited by the end of the month that follows the end of the quarter. So you can just think of that as that's made on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
Now, we also have filings. So payments, one thing, great. Those government agencies have their money, but they need to know what those amounts are corresponding to. So the volume of payroll forms, as you can see on the screen, it can be intimidating, but it's important because if they don't do those filings, the employer could be liable for penalties and interest. So most common filing frequencies are on a quarterly and annual basis. There are some states like Colorado, for example, has an option for a monthly withholding payroll filing. So it could be a little bit more frequent depending on the area. Common ones, we've got the 941 that reports Social Security, Medicare, federal income tax, state unemployment tax filings, state withholding, and then annual, those are due on January 31st. And you would see federal unemployment tax is filed manually. You've got the W-2, which I'm sure all of you have heard of because you probably have received a W-2 yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hope I haven't intimidated everyone about payroll as a whole. It's a lot of admin tasks to keep in mind. We spoke on earlier, business owners are spending almost 18 hours a month just on payroll alone, but we've got different ways that you can approach payroll. So I wanted to go over why you should offer payroll and how you can go about offering payroll. So right off the bat, this is a natural extension or add-on to what you're currently offering your clients and also to your expertise. A lot of the bookkeepers that I work with right now, you're already handling your clients' books, you're helping them manage the cash flow, maybe helping them with budget. Having oversight into the payroll portion, it actually helps you be better at your job. It gives you a better idea of their operations. And what's nice too is you can kind of be the hero a little bit. You can anticipate or spot risk before they come up instead of having to go in, put out fires after the fact. I would say too, kind of going back to that time component, it's really time sensitive. If payroll isn't approved when it needs to be, your client's employees aren't going to be paid on time. It can be really disruptive. So make sure that you're kind of bringing up to your clients the time portion and timely service. It's a real actual value add. They don't have to spend time on back office admin tasks. And in terms of your involvement with payroll, multiple ways to approach it. There's no right or wrong way either. Some of my bookkeepers, they take this on a client by client basis. Others, they have a standardized all or nothing approach of, this is how I offer payroll. And it makes sense for them because they can build out operational processes around that. So it's really however you would like to approach it.
All right.
Yeah. So let's do it. So refer is the very first one. This has the least amount of involvement. It's really an option for those who would rather not be responsible for running payroll on behalf of their clients. And I get that. You're simply referring your clients to a payroll service provider that you recommend. That part is key. But your clients, they're managing the ins and outs of payroll, like entering hours, maybe approving a pay run. What's nice with this option is you're sending your client somewhere with reliable calculations. Ideally, you're sending them somewhere that's also going to take care of the payments and the filings so that they're going to avoid notices, fines, and penalties. You might even be able to direct them to a software that actually speaks to something that you're using. If you're using an accounting system, that is a great question to ask a potential provider is, hey, does this actually speak to my system to help avoid double entry or maybe running after your client for information?
Right.
Yep. Now, I would say kind of the con here is that you really aren't going to be as involved as you would if you're actually doing it for your client. It could mean less revenue for you because there's less responsibility that you're taking on and just less visibility overall. So it can make it a little bit harder to anticipate problems and answer questions. But I do really think either way, you should be maybe directing them and potentially sitting in on a demo yourself because you're lending your authority or your name to a software recommendation, just attend a demo. OnPays we're hosting next week, but I encourage you, all software providers for payroll do offer demos.
Right.
So go through a demo of the software, see if it's going to be a good fit. This is something I know that you're going to be able to see this later. So I'm not going to read through these questions, but I've displayed some questions here that you want to keep in mind for different parts of, I guess, payroll procedures, what you may want to ask.
Okay.
All right. So how do you get more visibility and more revenue? It would be taking on a larger role. So you're able to do this by offering to monitor your client's payroll, but you're still staying hands off or touch free. You're owning the bookkeeping side of things. You might play some role into the approval process, but entering hours and the like, that is something that your client or maybe a manager on their team is taking on. I do think that this is nice because, like monthly reconciliations, that's going to be a lot easier for you when you have this level of insight. You're going to know what's going on when clients are hiring employees. You don't have to figure out, though, how to staff and manage the data entry piece or pulling all the levers. That's going to be on the business owner's end. And then depending on how you structure things with your clients, you could be going in to review each pay run and quarterly tax filings. What I've also seen bookkeepers do is you go in and you're just mapping the payroll data to the general ledger. And then you have access on a one-off basis if they're like, boy, I'm really confused. Can you take a look at something? But you're able to kind of spend more time on what you're doing best and leave the payroll to them.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the con, and this is, I think, just kind of, it may not apply to your clients, but clients, they still have control of the payroll process this way, which depending on the client could mean that they're leaving room for mistakes. So I have heard some accountants and bookkeepers go, what's the permission level I can give so that my client can't hit that approve button, but they can view reports? So it happens. I want to, be realistic, right? So our last option is really for our go-getters. It's the most hands-on. You run payroll with full ownership of the process. You can still give your clients permission to access the system or review payroll, but everything passes through you. And what's nice with the payroll providers, you're streamlining a lot of that. So in terms of great hours are entered, then what? Well, a payroll provider should be making the payments and doing the filings.
Right.
Now, this I really like because you are definitely going to get to know your client and their business intimately. You're going to have much more frequent contact with them. You're going to know when they hire or fire workers, where they operate, and it's going to contribute the most to your bottom line because, you're taking on more responsibility, which makes sense. Now, even if your clients have been running payroll on their own for some time, I do think there are advantages to working with an outsourced payroll provider or even like a third-party payroll provider. Outsource, sometimes people think they're losing control, but it's really we're taking control over kind of the more mundane aspects of payroll.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a payroll nerd, so all of it's fascinating to me, but I can definitely understand people's eyes can glaze over a little bit. And I have seen two situations where I'm onboarding a small business owner and I go, hey, we need your records. We need to make sure your account's up to date. And they're like, great. I handwrite my payroll on lined legal notepad. And I'm like, do you have copies of filings? No, I don't keep any copies of anything, but I have my notebooks. And so I think we want to graduate people, especially what we were seeing with last year, COVID-19 payroll tax credits and relief programs. A lot of that was very time sensitive in terms of application submissions. So being able to instantaneously access data or information is just so crucial. So I did want to kind of bring up an idea that you would see with any payroll provider that you're onboarding is that in order to make sure that everyone is in compliance, the timing of when they get started with that payroll provider could mean that they have to provide more information. So I'm going to cover this more in depth in our session on November 18th, but
Okay.
any payroll provider is going to ask for your client's prior wage history for the tax year in which they are starting. And we're not doing this to be annoying, I promise. This wage history, it's going to spell out what were that employee's gross wages, taxes, deductions for the year to date. It's going to ensure that we have up-to-date data because we're going to be completing quarterly and annual filings. And we need to make sure your client, if they only have one FEIN or tax ID through the year, one entity essentially, they are only allowed to give their employees one W-2. They can't give them a W-2 from wages outside of the system versus wages just recorded here. They just have to provide one W-2 with that entire history. So that is something that you'll want to anticipate. And that's also something that's definitely made easier for any transitions if they already have those records stored electronically.
So what she's saying, y'all, is like this between now and the end of the year is like this crucial time of possibly moving on new clients, and they might know that like, oh, I've been keeping it on a legal pad, I need to do something about it. And so, plan and price for this effort to migrate people over. And I know that like whenever that happens, like OnPay has specific help for getting us, like if we wanted to move someone onto OnPay between now and December, y'all are going to help us do that. You don't have to time it exactly on like January 1st, y'all. And it's probably impossible. Like just plan for this migration process, the making the move process.
Exactly. We offer free onboarding migration. So we just ask you for the reports or access to your client's system entirely on your and your client's level of comfort. And then we'll move over all that data for you. So definitely something we can do. We're just be expected for us to ask that question.
Yep.
All right. And I want to actually pause. I am going to go over marketing and how to introduce payroll as a service, but I wanted to make sure, were there any new questions that popped up? I didn't want to be going too fast.
Rachel had asked one about if that previous payroll provider has any alerts or delinquencies related to their previous payroll provider, and then they switch to OnPay. Do those notices kind of also come over with your service, or are those kind of still historical that you'll need to deal with outside of OnPay? She says she has a specific example of someone where thought maybe OnPay was going to handle something, but it was prior to the onboarding. So are these special situations something that the bookkeeper has to handle?
That's a very good question, Rachel. And that is something that we commonly see. It is something where if it's activity for wages performed outside of OnPay, those notices would have to be addressed. But the other payroll provider absolutely should be helping you with that, especially if it was something that was incurred on I'm not sure if they have an error-free guarantee, but that's something we would do. If someone gave us a notice, we have a dedicated team. We're completely free of charge. Give us the notice. We will address it with that agency, and we'll take care of that. And if it was something as an error on our part, we will cover penalties and interest. But even if not, we're still going to help you. So in that specific situation, you would have to handle it. What I would ask the onboarding team, though, is for that specific agency, hey, do you know where I would go to make this payment, or do you have a phone number? We can at least get you informational resources and get you in the right direction. When we do the onboarding process, there is a disclaimer at the bottom of our prior wage email. When we let you know, hey, prior wages are moved over, we do have a disclaimer that will say what your previous payroll provider should be responsible for, and that what OnPay is going to be responsible for, because we will draft for federal and state unemployment tax, because that is typically refunded if you are moving providers within the same quarter, because that tax isn't due yet. They'll typically give you back those funds or give your client back those funds.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else too? I just wanted to make
sure. Someone has asked if OnPay compensates for referrals. And I think y'all have like an offering right now that's bigger than normal, right? Like y'all do tell us about the referral thing.
Yes. So, there's two distinct aspects of it. You can enroll in our partners program completely free of charge, and we give you discounts off the OnPay monthly fee. We also give you an option if you'd rather take home a quarterly revenue share check. That could be if you have access to your client's account, you brought them onto OnPay, maybe they're managing the books, and you want to get that incentive and you're not billing them directly. So we offer that as a baseline in general, but we are having a very special promotion where if you bring on at least 5 clients between now and the end of January, and they run payroll by the end of January, you get $200 for each client. And then that scales up. You can get up to $10,000 in bonuses. So that's on top of the discounts. That's on top of the revenue share check as well.
Okay. And y'all, OnPay has given me a tracking link. So if you want to sign up for that OnPay accountant link, check the description below or at bookkeepingsidehustle.com/onpay. There'll be a link there, and that is a great way to say thanks to me. So let's keep going through the slides.
That sounds good. So, all right, we've decided to offer payroll as a service. Let's go over how do you get the word out or broach that subject with your clients. Very first step is deciding how you want to offer payroll as a service, and then researching potential software partners that can help you out. Once you have that idea, once you have that service model in mind, maybe kind of approach it with a few of your closest clients for feedback first. I will tell you that for our marketing team, that's what we do for market research is we kind of get the feelers out to, kind of not a beta testing group, but a few close clients. And make it a casual conversation. It doesn't have to be super formal. Just, hey, I am thinking about doing more to help people with payroll. This is how I'm thinking about approaching it. Do you think that's something that's actually going to resonate with people? Would it make their lives easier? And through that process, maybe there's someone that's like, oh my gosh, yes, I was waiting for you to say that. Please take me on. But they can give you some good feedback, and
Right.
it's a win for them too, because I heard this phrasing the other day. Someone said, you kind of make that relationship more sticky. And by that, it's really more they're centralizing their operations with you as their trusted advisor. So they have kind of a more buy-in to your firm, if that makes sense. And I thought that was just really well phrased, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm butchering it a bit.
Well, no, the more we offer, the harder it will be to leave. Yeah, they're
Exactly.
gonna like what we do and want more. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Now, once you've decided, hey, this is really good, I'm going to go ahead and expand this, send a personalized note to each of your existing clients. And by that, I mean you've got a standardized note or you've got a templated email. You're just adding a warm sentence or two of the beginning that's very specific to them. Let them know what you're up to. And you really don't have to go into too much detail, maybe 5 or 6 sentences. In the end, just ask, hey, is this something that you would like my help with? Or what I have seen some firms do, there's a firm called Mod Ventures that does an amazing newsletter, and I actually look forward to it. I signed up for it. They're a client of OnPay. It's an email newsletter, so it's MailChimp or one of those services. So also feel free if you want to do your own email newsletter, announce it that way too, and that's a really good way to incorporate that. But also, I would tell you, make sure it's added to your website. You don't want to run the risk of someone looking for a few distinct services online and they're overlooking your benefits because they aren't sure if you can, or payroll, because they aren't sure if you can actually help them get started with payroll. So I can't tell you the amount of times that I've spoken to an accountant or bookkeeper on the phone. I go to their website and it doesn't clearly
Yeah.
tell that viewer that they actually do payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never offered this as a service before, I do recommend also incorporate it into your new client onboarding checklist. It's that phrase that we've all heard of. Hey, and do you want fries with that? Just add it. Just say, hey, okay, I'm signing up for this service, and also, do you need payroll as well? And I feel like that's a less, not aggressive sales technique, but it's a little bit more conversational of an ask.
And again, because if they don't need it now, they're going to eventually need it. So just like
Exactly.
don't make this like a heavy question. This is standard
Yep.
business. If you don't need it now, and if they say no, then you're going to say, well, what do your growth plans have for when you anticipate hiring or when you anticipate becoming an S corp or something like that? So definitely talk about the fries with that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, now we know, hey, we're going to offer payroll as a service. We've got the word out. Big question, how are you going to price it? And we always recommend before you offer maybe a set quote, have an exploratory call with a new client. You need to ascertain their needs. And this is exactly what Kate was just referencing because you're speaking with that individual. How do you plan to scale? Ask those questions like that. Get the scope of what their project or relationship with your firm would be. There are firms that go with just a fixed pricing model, which means they're pricing out services the same way for this client versus this client. I will say, what's nice, it does standardize your pricing across different clients, but it's also standardizing across clients that may have unique situations. So it could be faster and easier for you, but scope creep, that tends to come up a little bit. So you may not be making as much as you could for the work that you're putting in if it's that baseline price for everyone. So that's why I generally kind of try to tell people about value pricing. It does take a little bit more work up front, but it often can yield higher returns for you. Value pricing, you're determining the perceived value of a service, which in this case would be payroll. And you're determining that for the client or what that perceived value is for your client. So, how long would it take them to do X, Y, and Z? Not you. How long is it going to take them? How much time are they currently spending on payroll or time management and all of that? And with payroll, while there are recurring time constraints, maybe your client is approving payroll twice a month or every other week, for example, you have to keep in mind as well that there's going to be times of the year where things are a little bit busier. Could be the end of the quarter, could be the end of the year. I'll say too, while we take on a lot of responsibilities, let's say you have clients migrating and you have to kind of hold their hand and help them collect data. you want to make sure that you're factoring in kind of a buffer, not just the straight, what's it going to take to process payroll on this recurring basis. And then ways that you can bill a client, you could charge an hourly rate of pay. That's a really more traditional route that I've seen taken. You could charge an a la carte fee for a particular service. The client, they see an itemized cost for the packaging and they're essentially building what they'd like. Another option that I'm seeing more and more is you're building your services into multiple fixed costs. So I think I wrote on the screen one fixed cost, but it's really through different membership service levels. So instead of that a la carte pricing where each package could be different, maybe you have established monthly membership tiers or levels. So that exploratory call is really determining which of those levels of effort and time and value that you're going to place that client in. So the baseline tier, it could be, we're going to give the business owner access to the tax filings. Maybe you'll help them with business registration with the state agencies for payroll. They could be brand new. The next one may be all inclusive of full service payroll. Then the next one, okay, we've got those items. Plus, we're going to do part-time CFO as well. It really all depends on what you offer. Just make sure, again, that you're assessing the value of your services accurately so you're not performing too much work for the amount that's being charged. I will say, too, we have on the screen the Goldilocks principle, and it ties in with that tiered membership service offering, because it allows you to appeal to various levels of the market where you've got that basic, standard, and premium product offering. Generally, more than likely, folks, they're going to tend to gravitate towards the middle option. It's called the extremeness aversion, and it's where consumers, they tend to avoid a particular option that's on two extreme ends of a scale. So generally people are going to gravitate towards the middle, and that's okay, but you're also able to capture people that want more basic offering or people that want kind of that gold level service as well. And then I have on the screen here just someone who's actually a co-host of one of our past webinars with OnPay. This is how they price it out. Little Fish Accounting. I love their website. You can see the little fish icon. So just also look at these slides as kind of branding opportunities of how they're displaying their branding. But she has Clarity Call, and then she goes to Tax Prep Suite, and then Virtual CFO. If you were to click Learn More, she's going to itemize very specific job duties that she performs with each of those practices. And actually, Kate, you're mentioning scaling and growing, and I just realized that Little Fish Accounting has this incorporated on the slide where the last bullet point is grow. So I like actually using that key term to kind of, emphasize what you're offering with each of those models.
Right.
And I'll say, too, you are in a great time to get started with payroll if you're thinking about it. Q1, there is a minimal amount of payroll that has potentially been processed. So if you have to move over to a payroll system, if that's the case, data migration or reviews are going to be less labor intensive. And also, this may be hitting your clients harder because they just went through that 2021 filing season and they never want to hear the word W-2 again. So that might just be the perfect time to approach that. Or start it early if they're feeling overwhelmed with year's end and everything they need to take care of. That also could be a good time of really now, sometime in November, having those conversations either in anticipation of Q1, which I kind of recommend, or, hey, how can I help you through year end? And go over that. Maybe if you go over like a year end checklist with your clients, create one, go over that with them and include that as just a standardized talking point. So in terms of how you can broach that, we gave an example of an email that you can send out. And right away, you're being relatable. First few lines are acknowledging, wow, 2021 has been really stressful. If you have time, personalize the intro to the client and then just make the ask. It's short, it's tied with a talking point, year-end filing. I have it underlined, grab some time on my calendar here. I really recommend if you are using like Calendly or some sort of online scheduling system, great, just pop it in there. That way you also know what that call is going to be before it happens. And then the conclusion, you're providing something to them, ideally a year-end checklist. It's going to help them along, and it's kind of getting your foot in the door there. Or revisit the conversation after early February if they're like, wow, that was a lot of filing that I had to do. But I do have examples of ways that you can promote your firm and payroll as a service on social media. There are really three distinct buckets that I think of in terms of posts that you consider putting together to keep your account engaging while also promoting yourself. Don't be afraid to talk about yourself. So the first would be, create posts for updates, news, announcements. If payroll is a new service offering, definitely highlight that in a social media post, or maybe you won an award or you were written about somewhere. Show your clients those types of things because it's also going to enhance your credibility and authority. And then you also can post reminders about upcoming important deadlines or new legislation that has passed. And then maybe that is a signal to your client, oh my gosh, I totally forgot I need to do this, or I need to make sure I get this application in, or oh man, I missed the boat for FFCRA voluntary paid sick leave. They were supposed to take it by the end of September. Those are little things that you could just kind of pop out there every now and then. And then finally, kind of what OnPay is offering, not to kind of toot our own horn too much, but like that article that that you were mentioning earlier, Kate, and that I was referring back to, create that type of content for your clients, because even if you're not offering payroll to them right now and you start establishing yourself as that authority figure, it's relevant to them, it's helpful to the audience, it gives them that expertise. And I just have a few examples from OnPay clients where, announcements, Latitude Bookkeeping Service, David Perry is awesome. He was recently featured in a customer story. He posted that on his Facebook, which I thought was great. I thought, oh, wow, good for him. Important reminders, Haney and Company, they're an accounting firm. And they're talking about some, changes with the IRS that were recently released. So they also have a read more, which I like. So don't be afraid to link back to your website. SEO stuff, Kate, you may know more about it than I do. It's a little over my head, but if you're backlinking or anchoring back to your website, that's going to also make sure you're kind of coming up further in web searches and you're appearing more often.
There's something to that. Yeah, I'm certainly not an expert at that. But.
Okay. But it sounds like it would be right. And then Mod Ventures, they are actually giving concrete information. I like it too because this Facebook post, they are giving you information without necessarily having to make you sign up or enter your information. But they also have, hey, come and check out our blog. So if you were to say, hey, I have this guide that I created, I spent a lot of time, enter your name and email address, and then you can access the guide. That is totally okay. I don't want to dissuade you. I do like that they're still giving you initially some information before they're routing you to their blog. And kind of I'll end with this. We do recommend, as we've mentioned throughout this program, partner with a reliable payroll provider. It's going to make offering payroll super easy. That way, right from the bat, those payroll deposits, those calculations, those filings, those are going to be right for any of your clients. So if you're interested, be sure to check us out. I know that we're including a link as well that will be specific to Kate. So that's the link I encourage you to go to. We are offering that bonus as well. And then next week, November 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern, we're going to go over OnPay specific. We'll go over the onboarding process and get your questions answered.
This is awesome. Thanks so much. I have if you've got questions, y'all chime in right now. We have one in the queue from Beth, and I think it's a fair question. She says, prior to Kate's introduction to OnPay, I had never heard of it. I do payroll in varying aspects for several clients. Most of them are through a different payroll provider. What would be the benefit of changing to OnPay?
Ooh, that's a good question, Beth. I love it. So there's several factors that I would keep in mind. I would say, though, I want to address where you're saying, hey, I've never heard of OnPay. Totally fair. There are a few sites where you can check out actual client reviews, G2 Crowd, Capterra, and more. We were actually last year PC Mag's Editor's Choice, and we're very highly reviewed by them, by CPA Practice Advisor. We have 5 stars. And a bunch of other accolades too. So I would definitely recommend, if you go to the review portion of our website, we have those consolidated, and especially G2 Crowd, Crapterra, hear from our clients directly. I feel like that's always the best way to kind of get the picture of how it would work for your clients. But I would say big benefits would be the flexibility and ease of use of our platform. For GL mapping, we do custom item by item GL mapping. You can break out the wage expenses to QuickBooks or Xero by department or pay item. So it's really robust. You can choose how detailed you want everything to carry over into that system. We've also got custom wage items, especially helpful if you've got clients that maybe have different projects or jobs, things of that nature. I would say in addition to that, the inclusivity of our price point. I didn't discuss it here because I wanted this to be as product agnostic as possible, so it's more educational. But next week, we're going to go over pricing. But I can tell you, Not factoring in the discounts you're entitled to, OnPay has just one level of pricing, $36 a month base, $4 for each actively paid employee or contractor, and that gives them everything. It also gives them unlimited pay runs, local tax filings, multi-state, literally everything we do, HR included, is at that price point. So I think that's nice. It's really easy to remember. Plus, you get discounts on top of that. And then I would say we've got really friendly customer support agents. I don't want to minimize the value of that, especially year end when it gets hectic. You want to be able to reach someone easily. So phone, chat, and email, you're able to reach a member of our team.
All right, Bev, I hope that answers your question. I am not seeing any other questions, so I am going to move us to the prize wheel. How about that, y'all?
Oh, that's fun.
So let me see. I'm going to remove her screen and share mine. And again, because we're doing 2 sessions with OnPay, you can still get your name in the wheel for next week. bookkeepingtitles.com/OnPay. There's a form. Go ahead and put your name in there. But for now, $100 Amazon gift card going to...
I'm so excited.
Melinda Stinnerson. All right, Melinda, I will
Melinda.
pop an email to you and to the OnPay reps together to get that gift card to you. Beth said you did answer her question, so that's taken care of. Going through my final little checklist here. Yeah, see y'all back on Thursday, November 18th at 11 a.m. And yeah, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you want to check out OnPay, the direct sign up link is below. Thank you, Kara. We will see you in 8 days, and it's been a blessing to talk to you. And I hope this was helpful, y'all, for just general introduction to payroll. Let's keep the conversation going inside the Facebook group. Don't be ashamed to be nervous about this. I was right there with you. I was too. And we will make sure you get the support that you need to take on that first client, to keep growing your business, to start charging clients for payroll services because they need our help. So we'll sign off for now. Thanks, everybody. See y'all in 8 days.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye, y'all.